guys so much. All right, you guys ready for our panel discussion? This is going to be a short but sweet and intense panel discussion. We are going to bring up our panelists now. Let's bring up first B. Smith and her husband, Dan Gaspy. B. Smith and Dan Gaspy. Here's yours, B. Here's Dan. All right, we have two brain scientists here who are super smart. They're neurologists, they're researchers, they have more credentials after their name than I can even mention. Let's bring up Dr. Keith Fargo and Dr. Richard Isaacson. Hang on, all right, we also, hi, how are you? That's all right. We also have a filmmaker and blogger. Where's Max? Max. Pronounce your last name, Max. Lugavere. All right, Max. And our Juice Press entrepreneur is here, Marcus Antebi. All right, I'm going to start with the doctors just because I feel like we've been talking a lot. We were mentioning how women seem to be disproportionately affected by this disease. And I was talking to some women earlier today, and we were wondering why that might be. Is it because we live longer? Is it hormonal? Do they have any idea why?
Sure, so I'll try to chime in. This question, we don't have all the answers yet, but in my belief, I think people can take different roads to Alzheimer's. It's not a very homogeneous disease, it's a very heterogeneous disease. And when it comes to women versus men, aside from living longer, I think there may be something hormonal, there may be something else, and we're not exactly sure what yet, but it's kind of like a man may be on one road, but maybe sitting in some traffic. The woman may be in a little bit more direct route straight over. So the goal of the future of Alzheimer's, and I actually believe that future is now, the goal is to try to get women and men off that road to Alzheimer's as best as we can by figuring out why that person is going to get there.
You know, you'd like to chime in? Yeah.
Sure, I would agree with most of what you said. The conventional wisdom has been in the past that it's driven mostly by the fact that women live longer. And so they have more of a chance to get Alzheimer's disease as they age. However, the more we learn about the disease, that's changing, and it has now become an open question. Are there differences between men and women that contribute to this other than just the age factor? Hormones may be a part, could be different life experiences that people have, especially people who are in the age now where they would develop Alzheimer's. You're talking about baby boomers, and they had very different lives depending on if they were men or women, and there could be other factors as well.
Mm-hmm. When we're talking about women being affected by this, I can't help but look at B. Smith. B. Smith, as you guys know, we've had her on the Today Show a gazillion times. She, is a restaurateur, a fashion icon. She's graced the covers of so many magazines and done so many amazing things with her wonderful husband who's with her here, Dan. They've written a book together called Before I Forget. And one of the most memorable moments to me was when you guys came on the Today Show and you spoke to Al Roker about what was happening, B, to you. And I remember you said, and Dan, maybe you can help, or B, you can, you were in the middle of a recipe, just doing what you always did on the Today Show, that you always did it like that. And on that particular day, something didn't seem right.
Something was very wrong.
Yeah. What did you, yeah.
At that time, I wasn't like I am today, and today is not a great day here.
Yeah.
Not that it's not here. I'm so happy to see everybody that's here, because as I'm going through the problems that I have, I try to just take care to them so that I know what I'm doing. And of course, when I knew that we were going to do this,
yeah,
I thought, oh, Dan, let's have a good time.
Yeah.
Yes. Well,
So you see, I'm not dead. I'm alive.
You know, Hoda, the thing that struck me was that Sweetie was always, we used to call her one take. Whether she had in TV, you set up a scenario and you could do something 3 or 4 times, but she usually hit the mark. And that was the first time that I'd ever seen her literally stop in the middle of a piece and freeze. And that's when it was the epiphany that says this wasn't, her being tired. There was something else going on. And that led us on to starting to explore, well, all of the things that seemed a little out of normal from her normal character, or what I call little signs of difference. became more apparent because that was the jumping off point, and that's what led us to realize that this was not something that was psychological. This was something that was ultimately biological or neurological.
And to the doctors, a lot of people run into things where you forget. You lose your way for a minute. But is there a way to realize if it's just typical forgetting stuff, or if you have something more you should be concerned with?
If it's okay with you, I'll go first. I think that's a very good point. There's something we call normal age-related cognitive decline, which the vast majority of us experience as we get old. We can kind of lose our edge a little bit, and it starts fairly young, actually. Most of us in this room are probably already experiencing that. It's important to realize that's not the same thing as Alzheimer's disease or another dementia. With Alzheimer's disease or another dementia, you're really talking about a disease process that's occurring in the brain that's going to lead to much more serious problems. And so one of the things I like to say is everyone loses their keys or forgets where they parked at the grocery store. But if you forget what kind of car you drive, or you get lost on the way home from the grocery store that you've gone to for 10 years, that's when it's time to see your doctor and get a memory evaluation.
There are some things we can do, and I think a lot of people here probably have a family member who was affected by Alzheimer's. If you have the genes, let's pretend like you are genetically predisposed to Alzheimer's. You always wonder if there's something you can do. Sometimes you think, well, that's my road, I'm just going to have to go down that road. And I'm going to talk to the nutrition guys in a minute too, because I think I'd love to know if there are things that you guys think we can physically do. But can you fight it in other ways?
Genes are not your destiny. If there's anything you take home from today, you can win the tug of war against your genes. Do not be fearful, do not be paralyzed. In fact, the most recent research shows that if you have one of the most common genes for Alzheimer's, well, guess what? The lifestyle approaches that we're doing today actually have greater benefit. So don't be fearful. Learn, talk to your doctor, have an open conversation, get screened. Every year, someone should have a cognitive screening. It should be like the cognitive vital sign.
Yeah.
Have the cognitive screening, talk to your doctor, get educated, get informed, and don't be fearful.
Max, you've done a lot of work, and you have a family member who was affected by this type of disease, right? You did a documentary. What was it called?
The title is Breadhead. It's a documentary in production right now.
Breadhead. So it talks about how sugar, I was curious about sugar and how that affects you. Is that something that
Yeah,
you found
sugar is one of the, especially added sugar, but in general, sugar and highly refined carbohydrates are one of the biggest villains to your brain health and brain function. So the goal that I'm seeking with my documentary is to really get people to re-examine foods that we typically think of as nourishing, and really, make an effort to select foods that help and bolster our cognitive health rather than fight it or maybe play more benign roles.
You know what's funny? I was watching this HBO documentary, and this is kind of weird. They had two beagles, same age, same everything. And they said they fed one of those beagles a high antioxidant diet for 3 straight years. He ate the same meal twice a day for 3 years, and the other dog just ate whatever dogs eat. Okay, they brought them back 3 years later, and one of the dogs played like a puppy and also was finding things. The other dog was slugging around. I mean, it seemed like it was one of those things that you look at and you go, food, that's a huge part.
Yeah, and the key with that study, actually, Carl Kotb did that study, and it was the biological principle of synergy. 1 + 1 = 3. When you do the exercise plus the diet plus stress reduction plus everything, there's a synergistic effect.
Marcus, you're a big athlete down here on the end. You're with Juice Press. You're responsible for all the juices and stuff. You've also had family members who are affected by this. How did that play in your chosen profession? It seems like you want to see people healthy.
How much time do I have? First, I just want to thank everybody for coming today, and I hope I don't take up too much time. I want to just comment on the earlier things that were said here.
Sure.
I'm very proud to be on a panel with doctors that actually acknowledge that genes are not a predetermined destiny. You're not doomed. That's actually scientific fact. Genes, it's very hard to pinpoint how much they play a role in any disease, but much smaller than you're traditionally taught. So your lifestyle and the thoughts that you keep play an enormous role in your overall health, except for children that are born with genetic defects. That's really a separate subject. What I know, I'm not a PhD, I have a PhD in nothing, is I have anecdotal science. I've been observing people and their diet for about 15 years very closely, and I can create a lot of hypotheses that would be studied and probably most people would agree with. What I could say is that about this particular disease is that, like any other disease, whether you're stuck with a pin or you have dementia, probiotics, the flora of probiotics in your upper GI and your entire GI tract are crucial, and you can never say anything negative about having a good digestive flora. So finding the right probiotic is always a very important part of catching something early and fixing the problem. What I've learned from a leading genomist that I was very fortunate to work with early on when I found the juice press was that a common denominator in people that do not get Alzheimer's is that throughout their life, they had a very clean diet with a very limited amount of processed food or no processed food, and they all work out excessively. And the word excessively is relative to who you're talking to, but that was the word. I could never really get a description on what excessive means. It's not an exact science. I also wanted to make a comment about what the gentleman here on my right said, is there has to be a very clear differentiation between processed and refined sugar and sugar that occurs naturally in fruit and starchy vegetables. One should never be afraid of the sugar that occurs naturally in fruit and starchy vegetables, because if you are and you avoid them, then you're avoiding vital nutrients, such as vitamins and antioxidants and minerals. Processed food is the curse of mankind, and all I can do is appear on one panel after the next, whether it's heart disease or diabetes or Alzheimer's, and just talk about the curse of processed food. The one thing that we do control are the thoughts that we keep and the foods that we eat. Those are two major lifestyle choices that we make. And I think that you can grab me after here. I could rant and rave about that for too long. This panel is really not about me. I don't really have enough expertise to stand up and be confident, but I do have a template that I use for all things that lead to inflammation, which I think as a layman, most doctors would be like, oh, okay, I guess he's saying it in a layman's simple term. So thank you for letting me speak.
Marks, that's good. And yeah, tell us, Dan, how that
One of the
plays.
things that the doctors have talked about and what Marcus and is Keith?
Max.
Max. That wasn't Alzheimer's.
That's good.
You know, when we started to research the book, there are two great books that we use that led us on this whole journey together. One is called Super Genes and the other is called Super Brains. It's by Dr. Rudy Tanzi from Mass General and Deepak Chopra. And what the doctors have said, what Marcus has said, is that your genes do express themselves differently. You are not the sum total of your genes, but how you think and how you act have a lot to do with what you do. What we came to understand when I found out that we had this diagnosis after going through a beta amyloid plaque test, Sweetie said to me, I don't want someone else to define me. I want to be defined by being active and engaged. And that's why we decided to come out. The other thing that was so important, the more we looked into this, it is diet, it is exercise, it is obesity, it is diabetes. All of those things are precursors. You know, being fat is not just tough on your heart, it's tough on your brain. Because what's good for your brain is good for your heart. But the single most important thing that I would say as we looked at this, I want you to think about this. You go into a Costco, you go into a Sam's Club, and you look at the organic chicken versus the chicken that's not organic, and you see how big those birds are. They're not chickens. And so it's like a pterodactyl. You're eating a pterodactyl. And so you sit there and you look at that, and you see what a normal chicken looks like running around, and then you start to find out that it used to take a chicken 17 to 18 weeks in normal time to go from egg to plate. Now it can take as little as 7 or 8 weeks. That's an NFL lineman, okay?
Right.
And so we are the sum of that. The other thing I really wanted to say is what the doctors have expressed and what we learned is that, quite honestly, Alzheimer's is a 21st century civil and human rights issue. 2 out of 3 people are women. Blacks and Latinos are 2 to 3 times more likely to have it, and the cost of care, especially in urban metropolitan areas, runs somewhere in excess of $100,000. So that either means you're paying that, or you're taking time off from your job, or you have family members delegated to take care of that loved one. And our government doesn't spend enough money. We're basically now at a $900 million threshold with only about $400 million going to actual research. For Zika and for Ebola and for diseases that are just now starting to crop up, in 1 year they spend the equivalent of 10 years on Alzheimer's research. Lastly, I just want to say, when I look here and I see a lot of the young people out here, something you've got to realize. This is 2016. If we don't get a handle on it, and the doctors, and there's 17 trials in prep right now, the people now who are graduating from college are going to be working 20 or 30 years. They're going to be taking care of their parents. We have the minds, we just don't have the money, and the dollars need to be spent through our government because they're the breeder reactors for the future for Big Pharma.
Big round of applause. All right, guys, I'll tell you what we're going to do. Everybody up here, I know you guys have individual questions, so this is kind of the cool part. Everyone has their own story that they want to talk and get info on. These guys are going to hang around, so you'll be able to talk to them here, get information that will help you out personally. Also, in addition to that, we're also going to be meeting experts from the Caregiving Home Care Association. They're here. The Alzheimer's Association is here. John Wesson is here. He's talking wines. I mean, who knows why, but yes, I say thank you. And we've got chocolate and coffee. So everybody enjoy. Thank you to the panelists. Thank you guys so much for coming.